All right, everyone, it is not yet time for the post-draft hangover. It's still gluttony time here at SEC in 60 with Chad Neipling of SEC Sports Insider. We ramped up this show 6 weeks ago. I'm Mark Rogers of MarkRogersTV. And Stephen M. Smith, I think he just tends to show up every week and likes to talk a lot of SEC football. No, Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama, we have asked him to come on because he provides some awesome insight into not only Alabama football but the SEC. If you're joining us for the first time, this is SEC in 60. We hit you on Google Plus Hangouts every Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern, noon Central. And this is what we give you, SEC football for at least 60 minutes, nothing but SEC football all the time. Again, Chad Neipling of SEC Sports Insider. Join him there on his website. Also follow him on Twitter. And for Stephen M. Smith, it's touchdownalabama.net among his many platforms, and also at Twitter at ESPN_future. And I'm Mark Rogers of MarkRogersTV. Okay, we're going to run down, gentlemen, the NFL draft as it pertains to the SEC, pick by pick. We start with 11 first-rounders from the SEC. We all know that the recruiting success of the SEC 3 to 4 years later translates to success in the NFL draft, and it just continues over and over. 49 from the SEC in this draft, 42 from the ACC, all of the other major conferences, the Pac-12, the Big Ten, the Big 12, all in the 30 to 35 range. The SEC, again, with 11 in the first round, the ACC with 5. Big Ten with 4, the Pac-12 had 3, and the Big 12 with 2. So let's start with the Houston Texans selection, which apparently was a no-brainer for most, not necessarily for me. I would have loved to have slid down, but anyway, the Houston Texans select Jadeveon Clowney. Not a whole lot to talk about here. We know the track record, we know the detractors, but we know the incredible talent. The question I have for both of you, Chad and Stephen, is what is a success going to be for Jadeveon Clowney in the NFL? If a quarterback's taken number 1 overall, we point to a Super Bowl championship as something that he's got to attain sometime in his career. But for Jadeveon Clowney, how are we going to judge a successful first season and a successful career? Chad?
For me, I think, and I had heard this from some analysts here over the weekend talking about the draft and talking about his pick with the Texans. And a lot of folks have gauged his level of, his level of efficiency and what he can do in the NFL by basically coming out his rookie year and getting the Rookie of the Year NFL, award. And I think, going into the NFL season this year, I mean, you're already putting a lot of pressure on a guy, before he even takes his first snap, which I understand a lot of people were going to because there were so many questions surrounding the fact of his motor throughout the season. So that's going to be expected. There's going to be a level of expectation for him coming into the league this year, just really based off the fact of the questions surrounding his ability to perform.
Hey, Stephen, any thoughts about Jadeveon Clowney and how fans and media are going to judge him this first year and throughout his career?
Well, Mark, going into the draft, I honestly felt like the Houston Texans would probably trade away the number 1 pick, but head coach Bill O'Brien has shown that he's a defensive-minded coach, and getting Jadeveon Clowney, I feel like Clowney's success is first judged by, can he get between at least 5 and 7 sacks his first season? I mean, he's going to be with guys like J.J. Watt, guys like DeMeco Ryans, and also the Texans did sign Alabama defensive back Jeffrey Pagan in the agency. So he's going to be around guys that are going to help groom, mentor, and help him become even more of a pass rush specialist than what he actually is. But I think the expectation for Clowney is going to be come in hungry, come in contributing to that defense with at least 5 to 7 sacks and being able to control the run game in that AFC South, the likes of the Tennessee Titans and the Indianapolis Colts.
Unfortunately, NFL fans, even hardcore NFL fans, are going to judge him by sacks. And even the media is going to judge him by sacks. I think you guys both did an excellent breakdown of Jadeveon Clowney last week when we talked about the numbers being there as a sophomore and not necessarily as a junior and what contributed to that. It has a lot more to do than just quarterback sacks. There's a whole lot more to playing defensive end in the NFL than just racking up sacks. You can cause havoc without necessarily wrapping up the quarterback before he delivers the football. All right, St. Louis at number 2 goes with Greg Robinson, the big guard out of Auburn. I thought that was the logical pick. That was the pick that was staring them in the face. We heard about Watkins. We heard about Manziel, possibly Khalil Mack out of Buffalo. But Greg Robinson's going to be an anchor along that offensive line for quite some time. Your thoughts, anybody? I think we're in agreement on Greg Robinson.
I will go ahead here. Well, I'm going to go ahead here and go first here, Mark. When you talk about Greg Robinson, he has a good ceiling being that run blocker for the St. Louis Rams. You talk about the Rams have Zach Stacy and also Trey Mason, which they got in the NFL draft. So Greg Robinson's a great run blocker. What he needs to improve on is his pass blocking ability. Tends to come off slow off the ball at times, but I think if the Rams pair him up with Barrett Jones, former Alabama offensive lineman, that will help mold him more as that pass blocker. But you talk about Greg Robinson, he's a mauler, gets out in space, can set the edge with pull blocks and kick out blocks, and it strike. He can lock up at the point of attack, create those holes in those running lanes. So as a run blocker, he's dominant. He has to mature more as a pass blocker.
Hey, Chad, I'll segue this into the next SEC pick as we drop down to Atlanta at number 6 and Jake Matthews, because it's interesting as the draft progresses, there are certain players that are going to be tied to certain other players throughout their career. And for the hardcore people, of course, you get past the quarterbacks and you look at a situation like this. The St. Louis Rams had their shot at a left tackle in Greg Robinson or Jake Matthews. Matthews goes to 6, and Atlanta, here's a guy that's maybe a little bit better in pass protection. I don't think there's any question about that, and has played multiple positions along the offensive line during his career.
Yeah, I think that if you're going to compare the two, you're going to think that Jake Matthews is going to be the far better pass protector, especially in the situation coming out of Texas A&M under Sutherland's system. And we saw what he was able to do to keep Manziel off of his back most of the last season. That said, you can't discount Greg Robinson's athleticism. Robinson's athleticism is what puts him off the charts in comparison to other players on the line that were taken this year. His ability to get downfield and run, they're going to have to use the run a lot in St. Louis this season, to keep Bradford healthy. They're going to need to dish that ball out whenever they can. We've noticed that he's been unhealthy for the most part since he's been in St. Louis. But I think they added Trey Mason later in the later rounds. Am I right? For St. Louis picked him up, I believe.
Yep. 75. Yep.
So they, now they've got a guy that can actually, put a little spark in their run back there. So you've got a guy like Robinson that's already familiar with Trey. They're going to be able to work off of each other, and I think that's going to be a great chemistry on and off the field. And it's going to help bring a little chemistry to the team. Matthews. I liked Matthews. I would have taken Matthews if I'm a pass-oriented team. I would probably taken him first over Greg. But I love his size, his technique, his fundamentals. I like a lot about Matthews. I think he's going to be a great guy on the next level. He's going to be a Pro Bowler in the future.
I think we all love the Tampa Bay pick with Mike Evans. Tampa Bay was not hiding its cards. It's been known for weeks prior to the NFL draft that Tampa Bay loved Mike Evans, and I think we all have the same general comment about Mike Evans. Not elite speed, but if you go through the scouting reports and what the personnel guys in the NFL have to say about receivers, they knock just about everybody. Unless you have world-class speed, they'll say not top-end speed. Well, for Mike Evans, it's probably on that third tier of speed, but that's not what he's out there for. Man, he is such a competitive receiver, has such great hands, fights for the football, high points of football, knows how to use his body to shield defenders. I just think Mike Evans is a great pick for Tampa Bay at 7. Stephen M.
Mark, I'm going to honestly say this. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers went to Sam's Club, and they shopped for some receivers in this draft. They used that Sam's Club card to capacity. You talk about they got some basketball players and Mike Evans out of Texas A&M and Austin Seferian-Jenkins from Washington at tight end. They provided Josh McCown with some targets. We talk about Mike Evans, 6'5", 220 pounds plus, doesn't have a top-end speed, but guess what? He's a go-get-it, high-rising receiver, great leaping ability, can snatch the ball out of the air. with a 6'5" frame, he's able to create separation. He's easily able to get open, and he's going to provide Josh McCown with that safety blanket at that receiver position. Tampa Bay, they did exactly what they needed to do. They got the talented receiver.
On a side note, I'm a little interested to see how McCown's going to play in Tampa Bay over 16 games versus 5 or 6 in Chicago last season with the two receivers that he had making incredible plays. And no slight to Vincent Jackson and Mike Evans, but Evans is a rookie, and McCown was looking really good with those two receivers, him just tossing up the football last year. Let's stay with the receivers, Chad. We got Odell Beckham Jr., another pick that I love here with the New York Giants. It was surprising to me. We know that the slide that the Giants took last year, but looking at the offensive stats for this team, they were like 28th in the league in points scored. They were in the bottom 5 in rushing yards, passing yards. They have declined on offense in a hurry. The offensive line got old. They lost their 2 running backs. They have just deteriorated offensively, and they need a spark. They need a young playmaker opposite Victor Cruz. And Beckham Jr., 59 catches, 8 touchdowns last year, a very polished receiver.
Yeah, you're going to add a 1,000-yard receiver to your roster coming out of the SEC. Not only that, a guy who's coming out of Cam Cameron's offense that is, as we know, is close to the NFL as you can get. And I think he's going to be able to step in with Cruz, and those two guys are going to be able to play off of each other. Not only that, Eli Manning is going to more than welcome this guy because he's a speedster, a good route runner. Not only he creates separation in the secondary, creates some padding so he can get to the ball. The guy has a great skill set already, so now once he gets into the NFL, all he's going to do is that's going to blossom onto a whole other level once he gets up there with Eli Manning and these guys. We know the Giants in the past have had some firepower on offense, so I think this is a perfect pick in my opinion, and it was one that was unexpected. I didn't see this one happening, and I love the pick. After I sat back and thought about it, I was like, this is a perfect pick for him, and it's a perfect situation for him to walk into.
Yeah, that was kind of a theme throughout the first round for most of us. Unexpected picks all over the place. Not complete reaches, but just guys slotting just a little bit different than what we saw. Odell Beckham Jr. is kind of interesting that he was just a great contributor in the kicking game as well. Punt returns, kickoff returns, 110 kick and punt returns in his career. Although he did not display himself as an explosive punt returner, I would expect him not to be used as a punt returner in the NFL. They would like to keep him healthy. He's a wide receiver. He's a first-round guy. We drop down to Baltimore. Here's Stephen M., and this guy sets up perfectly for you. C.J. Mosley going to Baltimore. The captain, the guy that might be a little bit undersized, might have some issues in coverage, but play the strengths and weaknesses for Mosley for us.
Well, when you look at the Baltimore Ravens, Mark, Ozzie Newsome has done it again. The Ravens have basically become Alabama Crimson Tide Central. I mean, before they P.J. Mosley, they had Terrence Cody and, of course, Courtney Upshaw. But when you bring in C.J. Mosley, yes, the size is a factor. He's only 234 pounds, but we already have Courtney Upshaw and Terrell Suggs there and Elvis Dumervil there. Those 3 guys are your main pass rush specialists. Baltimore is going to basically count on C.J. Mosley to do what he does best, which is replay. Read the going, use his sideline to sideline lateral quickness to shoot gaps, play the coverage lane, and lower the hits on running backs. And that's C.J. Mosley's skill set. He's not a thumper. He's a reader. He reads where the ball is going, gets to the football, and makes secure tackles. His weakness, once again, is the backs coming out of the backfield. Can he defend those wheel routes? The NFL is known to have its backs catch the ball out of the backfield on those drag routes and on those wheel routes. So can he defend wheel routes, and also can he defend those bigger, physical tight ends coming over the middle? But those are the only 2 questions. When you talk about him, he's a reader. He dissects where the ball is going. Doesn't have to be a pressure edge rush linebacker. Just continue to read where the ball is going.
Tennessee's dropped off the national football map here in the last 5 years. People in the SEC know that Butch Jones has a good thing going. He's recruiting much better the last couple of years. The one thing that the Vols have been able to do the last few years, that's run the football. They had 3 offensive linemen taken in this draft. Rajon Neal did not get drafted, but he'll show up at an NFL camp. I'm sure he's been signed at this point. and the first guy taken off the board goes to the Miami Dolphins, and we know what the Dolphins' offensive line situation's like. It is a mess right now, sparked by the controversy, and then it just kind of deteriorated from there. They have lost all sorts of offensive linemen. Their starters are basically gone. You got Jawan James, 49 starts in this Tennessee running game, and he was a guy that got less acclaim than Antonio Richardson, but as an NFL prospect, graded much higher.
Yeah, add Fulton to the mix with that, with James. Those guys were road graders. Under Pittman at Tennessee, Tennessee, a lot of people don't realize, but in the last couple years, Tennessee was putting up some massive yardage on offense, but they just weren't getting the wins. And a lot of that was due to a guy like Sam Pittman as their offensive line coach, who was able to get these guys like James and Fulton. And they were highly underrated, but everybody in the SEC knew that those guys were NFL caliber linemen on the next level. If you've seen these guys, they are the exact definition of a true road grader offensive lineman. They've got nasty streaks in them. They got to reach. They get down. They squat. These are the type of guys that are going to make big time linemen in the next level. I love the Jawan James pick, and as you had mentioned already, Mark, Miami has been in shambles on that offensive line. Long didn't work out for them. They thought that was going to be their next big guy, and of course that didn't work out. They couldn't get the contract renewed, but to be honest with you, I don't even think there was an interest in renewing that contract with them. So that said, this is an area that Miami has struggled in for a long time, and in order for them to get back to prominence, they're going to have to reconstruct from the inside out.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think Tennessee's on the ascension. I think we'd all agree with that. I don't know if it's going to show up in the win column because the competition's so tough, but on the flip side, they're going to have to replace. I don't have a concern with Rajon Neal as much as those three veteran offensive linemen that really got the job done in the running game in particular. If you guys haven't guessed by now, I'm going every other. I don't think we have time for everybody to chime in on every pick, but I think the flow's right with us, Stephen M., because these Alabama players just seem to be falling in your lap. So here's the next one. Green Bay Packers, ha-ha, Clinton-Dix, and Stephen M., we know you love him.
Mark is just like the Baltimore Ravens. The Green Bay Packers have become Crimson Tide Central. You look at ha-ha, Clinton-Dix. He's playing for the Green Bay Packers. You get to work with guys like, of course, Clay Matthews, A.J. Hawk, and then the one thing with the Green Bay secondary, Mike McCarthy is trying the secondary to be effective, efficient, and dominant. And what better way to start than getting ha-ha Clinton-Dix, somebody who not only can play the pass, can plant that cleat in the ground, can undercut, create turnovers, also lay hits on receivers, knock the ball down, receivers well as the football. But Clinton-Dix can also come down in the box and lower the hits on running backs. Mike McCarthy loves defensive backs, and a great way to start by getting Clinton-Dix, a physical defensive back. My question to him, though, he did not display that top-end speed at the combine. And when you're playing in the NFC North, you're competing against receivers like Alshon Jeffrey, like Brandon Marshall, those tough NFC North receivers that can go up there, go get it, and that can outrun you. Can ha-ha Clinton-Dix get his speed up more so he can play with these big-time, full-fast NFC North receivers? But talent-wise and ceiling-wise, great choice for Green Bay getting Clinton-Dix.
The drama that was Johnny Manziel's plight in the first round on Thursday night, the Cleveland Browns sitting at 4, they trade out of the pick. It appears as though they don't want him. Then they jump back to 9 with the trade with Buffalo, but then they trade with the Vikings. The Vikings needed a quarterback. Everybody thought it was going to be Manziel or Blake Bortles for the Vikings sitting at 8, but then the Browns trade with them, so it's obviously going to be the Johnny Manziel pick because they jumped in front of the Vikings. No, they go with the cornerback Justin Gilbert, and then they're sitting down at 26. Johnny falls and falls and falls. And then the Browns jump back up and they grab Johnny Manziel. So we're going to break our rule. We're going to give everybody a shot at Johnny Manziel here. So we'll start with Chad on Manziel to Cleveland at 22.
This was going to happen. I think most people had speculated that the Browns were going to go after him. They'd had him pretty high on their board anyways. Johnny Manziel to the Browns, it makes sense for them. They've gotten The fan base is already excited. You're looking at 1,500 to 2,000 season tickets were sold within 24 hours of him being announced as being picked and drafted. So I mean that's a ton of money when you look at it. When you're talking about NFL season tickets, that's not cheap per ticket. And we mentioned last show, Mark, that their fan base is loyal. Probably one of the most loyal fan bases because even if they have a losing season, they're still packing out the stadium. That fan base is going to embrace Johnny much like they did LeBron when LeBron was there for the Cavs. Just hopefully he doesn't do 3 and out and bounce on But there's some people that have speculated that Manziel may just do this 3 years ago. But I think that this guy coming in, the thing that's going to hinder him right off the bat is the fact that Josh Gordon is possibly going to be out for the 2014 season because he failed his second drug test. Now, what I did find out, what I've been able to research is Josh Gordon was getting tested up to 10 times a month. So it wasn't like he didn't know that he was going to have to do a urinalysis for the NFL. So this was something that you have to question his responsibility, his character, and things at this point. But for Johnny, that's already a hindrance. And I think they have another receiver that's injured or could be injured until most of the 2014 season. He may not come in until midway. So Johnny's already going to have to put the load on his shoulders coming in this offense, for the offense this 2014 season. And we talked about Clowney having expectations, but realistically, Johnny Manziel is going to have just as much, if not more, coming in this 2014 season.
All right, Stephen M. Johnny football at 22 to Cleveland.
I agree with what Chad just talked about the Cleveland Browns. They're now having jersey sales. They're now having revenue coming in because with Johnny Heisman, Johnny Football, Johnny Pigskin, throw any analogy you want to throw in there. With Johnny Manziel, there's the sales. There are jersey sales. There are ticket sales. There's everything there. But also what Chad mentioned, you have Josh Flash Gordon, who is your #1 vertical deep threat with the off-the-field issue of him failing this drug test. The question lies, Browns should have gotten a receiver in the NFL draft, did not get a receiver. I'm pretty sure they signed someone in free agency. But when you talk about the Cleveland Browns, now the pressure is going to be back on the run game. Cleveland's going to have to depend on running the football, running the ball more, and probably have to get jumped more of these short to intermediate route on something until they get that deep threat receiver. Now, as Chad mentioned, the receiver that's injured right now is Nate Burleson, former Detroit Lion receiver. Nate Burleson was the one who broke his hand, and it may take Burleson a while to get back. So with Manziel, it's a good pick because you have the face of your franchise. Now you have the guy that's going to put butts in the seats, have the revenue going, have a ticket sales going. But now the question is, where do you find a receiver? Because if this holds, of course, Flash Gordon is going to appeal. But if the suspension holds, my question is, where do I find a receiver?
As I mentioned last week, I like the Johnny Manziel pick to Cleveland. I think the Browns really need him. I think Blake Bortles is a safer choice, but I think Manziel is the one chance for a superstar quarterback to come out of this class. He's the guy, and yes, he could be a bust, but I think the Browns needed to take that chance on Johnny Manziel. He could be a star. The Josh Gordon situation is very unfortunate. Considering Josh Gordon led the NFL in receiving yards last year with Brian Hoyer and Jason Campbell at quarterback, journeyman quarterbacks, and he had almost 1,700 yards. It would have been fun to watch those two guys play together. We'll see how the process plays out, but Johnny Manziel to Cleveland, I really like that. For the folks out there, we don't have time to really get into it, but there's some talk out there of the Patriots scouting analysis of Johnny Manziel leaking. It would be interesting to take a look at that and see that. Look it up on the internet. They have some very derogatory things to say about Johnny Manziel's work ethic or lack thereof, and his brushing aside of coaches and teammates and not being the type of leader that you would want in a mature player at that position. Right after Johnny Football at 22, you got D. Ford, Kansas City. Love what this guy did last year. He missed 3 games early, really challenged the defense when the Auburn Tigers were not playing good on defense, were not living up to what the offense was producing. They came on down the stretch. It was never going to be a great defense, but they played much better. 14.5 tackles for loss. Very competitive guy, tough guy, hard worker. He's thin. He's got a small frame. He could get pushed around on the edge, but he wasn't drafted for that. And every player's got their flaws. So, Chad, any thoughts on D Ford here?
This one, out of all the picks in the first round, kind of felt like more of a reach to me than the other picks. And, not knocking D Ford, because I think D Ford was able to ride that wave of getting to the national championship and winning the SEC with Auburn. So I think that kind of really helped catapult him into the next into this first round. But to be honest with you, I really thought that they missed out. If they wanted that defense to get a spark, they missed a guy like Coney Ealy. To me, Ealy went at 60 and ended up going to Carolina, but D Ford to me was kind of a reach because Ealy was the more diverse of the two and actually ranked higher on the defensive. If you're looking at defensive players coming into the draft, he actually ranked a little higher. So for me, Ealy would have made more sense if you were wanting to get that dominant pass rusher or more versatile defensive player. But that's not to knock D Ford, because I think D Ford's an excellent player. Like you said, he's a little thin, but he's really athletic. That said, this pick at Kansas City is the only one in the first round that really kind of had me scratching my head.
All right, Stephen, and we get the Patriots, and this is the last SEC pick in the first round. Dominic Easley, we know the situation with him at Florida, where both ACLs gone at some point, one as a sophomore, I believe, or maybe his freshman season in 2011, and then this last season only played 3 games, and it really speaks to some amazing ability when you can have those type of injury issues, only play 3 games your final season at Florida, and get drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. So Dominic Easley of Florida going to New England.
The pick of Dominic Easley to the New England, Mark, is a double-edged sword. And the reason why, Dominic Easley, as defense tackle, the guy can plug up holes, he can stop the run, he's a good pass rusher. I haven't seen a dominant New England defense since the 2000s where they had guys like Mark Vrabel and Teddy Bruschi. However, the injuries are a factor. Can they keep Dominic Easley healthy is the question. When you talk about 2 ACL injuries, will he have that same explosiveness? Because the ACL, that tendon, that ligament, it provides the burst, it supplies the speed, it supplies the explosiveness, the ability to get off the ball, push off those ankles, push off those knees, to rush the passer, to stop the run, to shoot those gaps. Up to the training staff and the conditioning of Dominic Easley, and if he can stay healthy, he will be a beast for the New England Patriots because the potential is right there. But his health, can he stay healthy, is the question.
Yeah, it's a huge risk to take in the first round. I was going down the board to try to figure out who had been the next guy off the board at that position, so there really wasn't anybody exactly a defensive tackle. If you look at defensive end, DeMarcus Lawrence was a reach for Dallas at 34, most people think. So I don't know where the Patriots would have went. They were definitely locked in on that position, and they're going to take the chance on Dominic Easley. We drop down into the second round, and we go to Philadelphia, taking Jordan Matthews out of Vanderbilt. Chad, your thoughts on Jordan Matthews? Obviously, the production is off the charts at Vandy.
You have to applaud Philly for doing this. He's going to fit so well in Kelly's system, that speed system. Not only that, Philadelphia leads all the NFL teams with consistent SEC players. They've got 170 overall that they've drafted over time. And, the next in line is Chicago, Arizona, and one more team combined. They had 154, all 3 teams. But Philadelphia themselves has taken 170 SEC teams over time. And this makes sense to go into Kelly's system. You get a guy who's the SEC receptions leader, a guy that has to play that receiver position. He's got speed. He's going to be able to get in and explode in Kelly's system. I love this pick, and I thought it was a phenomenal pick for Philadelphia to get.
Even early in the second round, you start to see some guys that are kind of projects, but this guy is not a project. He is a finished product. Obviously, he's going to learn a few things in the NFL, especially under Chip Kelly, but this is a guy who knows how to find soft spots in the zone. He knows how to beat the man-to-man. He has so many reps catching the football. He's got great hands, 112 receptions last year, and we know he's the all-time leading receiver in the SEC. All right, again, it's falling right into Stephen M's lap. We got Buffalo taking Cyrus Kouandjio, which might be the best name in the draft, I don't know, out of Alabama. And, boy, when they started to throw up the game tape, and we saw it both watching the games, all three of us watching Alabama very closely as we always do. Virginia Tech and Oklahoma, those game tapes kind of stick out.
Well, for all, Mark, Kouandjio has to realize, baby, it's not sweet home Alabama anymore. You're going to the cold. You're going to New York. You're playing in snow, my friend. Can you handle playing in snow, playing in the cold? Now, Cyrus Kouandjio, 6'7", 325 pounds, is an exceptional run blocker. He can set the edge to the outside. My question with him, can he be an effective pass blocker? If you watched on tape, especially against Auburn, Virginia Tech, and Oklahoma, he's slow off the ball. He cannot be slow off the ball against Buffalo. E.J. Manuel was finally back healthy for the Bills. Lansing didn't play a lot because of injuries. The Bills just went out there and drafted Sammy Watkins, a vertical receiver. They signed Mike Williams in agency. But in order for this offense to work, it starts with Cyrus Kouandjio at left tackle. Can he put a hat on a hat, block at the point of attack up front, and protect the backside of E.J. Manuel, as well as create a whole game? I think Cyrus Kouandjio can be able to, and also, can Cyrus be more alert and recognize the quarterbacks? Half of the penalties Alabama got last season was via the offensive line. Most importantly, Cyrus Kouandjio all starts. The fans of college football are noisy, but Mark, Chad, you and I know those NFL fans are boisterous. They are loud, intimidate, and disrupt the timing. Can Cyrus Kouandjio be alert, and can he be an effective pass blocker? Those two instances, along with can Big Boy play in the coach? If he can, Buffalo's got a good pick in Cyrus Kouandjio.
All right, that's an interesting topic we can tackle sometime. Talking about guys in the South, the SEC coming up north, playing football. I see success out of most guys. I don't think it's a factor long term, but I think it's a good topic in talking about both in their collegiate careers, maybe possibly having some games when we don't see it right now in the scheduling, and then also as it translates to the NFL. But you talk about Alabama North being in Green Bay right now. I don't think Eddie Lacy had any issues last year, and these guys are able to adjust. They're true professionals, and one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time from Southern Miss goes to Green Bay and tears it up. So we got Chicago at 51 and Ego Ferguson, Chad, out of LSU, out of the factory. They continue to churn out the pros, and they had more players drafted. Even by their standards, a down season still had more players drafted than anybody out of the SEC.
Yeah, and you got to love – I love this pick personally. This is a pick that I rejoiced about. You know, being a Bears fan, I love the fact that we addressed the defensive needs in this draft. You know, I was really kind of on Aaron Donald, the guy out of Pitt that I really did like in the first round. I was kind of hoping we might go up and grab him. But then they come back in the second round and they get Ego Ferguson, and I sit back and I say, hey, that's a great pick. This guy, you know, he already comes out of an NFL-style defense. They're coming out of an NFL-style scheme. He's going to be able to adjust to that Bears 4-3. I really love what, you know, this pick here. This guy's a mountain of a man. We've been able to see Bears get explosive guys off the line. The defense for Chicago has always been a staple for them moving forward. We've always, you know, the offense hasn't been able to do much since 84, 85. So, you know, if anything, we can always bank on the defense. And I love this pick. This guy's got a motor. He's got a reach. Not only that, he's a mountain of a man at 300-plus pounds. He's a guy, in my opinion, that's going to come in right away and probably get some playing time right off the bat.
And you bring up a good point of not just playing in an NFL scheme defensively, but seeing an offensive scheme where teams run the football. Man, you pull some of these guys out of these conferences like the Pac-12 or the Mountain West, and they never see a rushing attack that just lines it up comes at you with a fullback like a Jay Prosher or a Kiero Small, like Ego Ferguson's taken on at LSU, where they'll just come right ahead at you with the running game. So we finally get a running back off the board, and I think we all agreed that it was either going to be Carlos Hyde or it was going to be Jeremy Hill or possibly Trey Mason, but probably Hill or Hyde, but it was Bishop Sankey out of Washington. Then the running back started to come off the board, and right after him, Cincinnati takes Jeremy Hill. Stephen M., your thoughts on Jeremy Hill?
That's on Jeremy Hill. Jeremy Hill is a dominant power back. He's a dominant power back who can lower his shoulders, lower the boom, truck, drive people over. He's great for churning out those 4- or 5-yard carries, but when he gets into the open field, look out. He has a gear to him. He can get in space, downfield, turn on the gas, and get the payday of the touchdown. My one with Jeremy Hill, his character tends to be a little eerie at times. Can he become that character guy? Because the NFL is a business. It's a business, then it's a family. So in the NFL, they look for you to be that character guy for your team, in front of the media, and everything that comes with it. As far as his skill set, Jeremy Hill, no question, is a molar, is a beast, is a dread. He has that gear, he has that mentality to get downfield and create big-time yardage. But can he be that character factor is the question in the National Football League.
Man, guys, we could talk about that for an hour some week. Talk about character issues and value picks versus non-value picks, and at what point do you go all the way up and grab a guy who's maybe dropped because of character issues, but you're willing to take the risk, and all those things involved. When it comes to Jeremy Hill, there are guys that clean up their act and understand the financial risk that's at hand, and they're able to clean up their act based on just knowing that this is a business and I need to do it. They're not necessarily making the right decisions for the right reasons, but hey, from a business standpoint. But then there's guys that just show that they can't control themselves, and these NFL personnel guys, unfortunately, seem to have to deal with this more and more, where they're trying to make a prediction on, is this guy, can we right him? Can we get him on the right track? Can we clean him up a little bit? Can he stay on the straight and narrow, at least as much as it pertains to playing NFL football? And they have to make a valued decision and make the call on it and try to predict the future, and it's very difficult to do. All right, Chad, you get to talk about Coney Ealy here. Carolina takes the Missouri defensive end.
You know, for me, this guy would have been, if I was looking for a defensive end, like I said before, with D4 in the situation in Kansas City, this is the guy I would have went for. He's been in the defensive tackle position, defensive end position. He's also been in the outside linebacker position. The guy's versatile. He's big. He's strong. He's fast. He's got a reach on him. In my opinion, he's a lot of the big reason why Michael Sam even got the attention he got out of Missouri was because of the ability of Coney Ealy to disrupt the pocket and get pressure on quarterbacks all season. A lot of people have kind of looked at Sam as the guy who was the superstar, but in all honesty, I think Coney Ealy was the guy that was overlooked. This guy, in my opinion, is going to be a Pro Bowler on the next level. He went to Carolina. Carolina is a team that typically in the past has had guys on defense that were really good. They've had defenses in the past that were pretty good. I think they're kind of in a rebuild right now, especially on offense. But I think, if anything, this is going to add a dominance for Carolina going forward on the defensive line.
All right, 20 minutes to go, gentlemen. We've got about 33 picks here. We'll go with Jarvis Landry out of Miami. Stephen M., if this guy doesn't run a 4.7 or whatever it was really slow, he's probably a top 15 or 20 pick based on production at LSU.
Based on production at LSU, Mark, Jarvis Landry, great receiver, can high point the football, crisp route runner, can create that separation. And going to Miami, good pick. Another weapon for Ryan Tannehill. The Tannehill can be able to get him the football in face, allow Jarvis Landry to work, allow him to get a feel, and make those big plays happen. I like the pick of Jarvis Landry by Miami. Star receiver, going to be an 1,000-yard receiver in the NFL.
All right, Chad, any thoughts on Seattle? Last pick of the second round, go with Justin Britt, offensive tackle out of Missouri. The Seahawks seem to know what they're doing. They slide down and grab up picks in the middle rounds, and it's paid off for them in the last few years.
you can't really question, in my opinion, you can't really question what Pete Carroll and those guys are doing. They've got it down to a system up there. I mean, they're taking guys that have been pretty much, they weren't considered the superstars in the draft, but then you end up seeing them going after championships year after year. So I like this pick that, they got another guy who's out of Missouri who, like you had said earlier, he's seen rushing attacks. He's seen some offenses that have had some power come at him with some big backs. So I think that this is a smart pick by them. They address a need. Russell Wilson's going to love this guy because this guy's going to have a nasty streak in him, and he's going to be able to keep Russell Wilson off the ground.
All right, Stephen M., we're in the third round now with St. Louis taking Trey Mason. This guy had a nice career. He got playing time even as a freshman and just kind of built upon that. And then the last 5, 6, 7, 8 games of his career just, turned into the best back in America out of nowhere. 1,816 yards, 23 touchdowns, had the enormous SEC championship game against Mizzou, 304 yards, ran it down the throats of the big boys. Florida State for 195, Alabama. He came to play in the big games and really was a workhorse.
Well, Mark, I'm reminded of Ziggy Ansah and Cal Van Noy for BYU. They played together at BYU, and now they're playing together in the National Football League. It's the same thing here with Trey Mason and Greg Robinson. They played together at Auburn, playing together for the St. Louis Rams. What a perfect fit for Jeff Fisher to go out there and get Trey Mason. Talking about a compact running back, smooth, great vision, very agile, good speed, good combination of power. And what I love the most about Trey Mason is he follows his blocks well, allows his blocks to sound well, and of course he's able to spell Zach Stacy, get him a breather, a couple of plays or two. Great pick by Mason, who is an in running back.
Hey, Chad, we'll couple guys together here. We got 2 offensive linemen coming off the board next. Detroit takes Travis Swanson, a center out of Arkansas. Oakland goes with Gabe Jackson, Mississippi State guard. I know you like him. Swanson seems to be a curious pick. I think it was a bit of a reach. I'm not going to pretend to have watched game tape specifically on Travis Swanson. He did lead an offensive line that had 2,000-yard backs, and the quarterback didn't get sacked. They weren't productive in the passing game, but bench 225 only 20 times. He's not a great athlete. Of course, centers don't really require that type of athleticism. But your thoughts about Swanson and Gabe Jackson?
With Swanson, I liked the pick going to Detroit, especially considering that Stafford needs protection in order to get. We've seen that this offense that Detroit's been able to put up, but Stafford's got to be able to stay upright to do so. And I think Travis Swanson coming previously when he had been a part of Bobby Petrino's system, that's all they did was pass protect. And he was moved to the center position once Bielema came in. So you've got a guy that has durability. He's played all 4 years that he's been in college. I think also, too, with Swanson is, there's, from what I've been reading, is that there's some talk that they may move him to a tackle position, which for him would work. He could add on a few pounds. We know he may not be the fastest guy in the world, and I think that may be a concern as far as him being able to pull. But that said, I think he's a great fit. He was rated, I think, the third best center in the draft. So for him to go here, I think he's going to be one of those guys that can be put in either position as far as tackle or center. Gabe Jackson out of Mississippi State, I love this guy, man. I love everything about him. He's a great guy. Not only that, on the field, the guy's a monster. You look at what they were able to do at Mississippi State starting out last year, and Gabe Jackson was a big part of that on offense. Guys like Dak Prescott and Josh Robertson and a couple of these other guys that were able to run and create some space, it was due to a guy like Gabe Jackson. Him going to Oakland really solidifies Oakland's job in the offseason this year. Oakland has really went after it in free agency, and it looks to me like they had a pretty good draft overall. So I think that Oakland, in all honesty, may be turning that program around up there.
It's always fascinating to see how these guys turn out in the NFL, but this guy in particular, I'm going to be interested, Stephen M. Dante Moncrief in Indianapolis. Let's see what happens there.
Oh, that's a good pick.
That's a good pick, Mark. That's an interesting pick. You give Andrew Luck another weapon to go right with T.Y. Hilton and Reggie Wayne. That's a good pick. Dante Moncrief, for him, can he continue to be consistent? You saw in times last season with Ole Miss, he tended to drop some passes, kind of lost focus a bit. But when he's on, Dante Moncrief is a physical specimen. He can snatch the ball out of the air. He has speed. He's a high runner, and he can create separation. My question is, can Dante Moncrief be more consistent, but a good fit for him in Indianapolis, putting him right with Andrew Luck, who's going to get him the football?
All right, Chad, let's group some guys together again. We got Trey Turner. We talked about him last week, guard out of LSU, rated by most services the third best. Carolina takes him at 92. Then I was a bit surprised, and again, we're talking about NFL projected talent versus production in college, and Jalen Watkins was a very good player at Florida. He came out with two other very productive cornerbacks, defensive backs, I should say, in Purifoy and Roberson, but he was the top pick out of that threesome going to Philadelphia.
You know, I'm kind of with you on the part of kind of being taken back by that, because I figured Purifoy or Robertson would have went before Watkins, in my opinion, just based off of collegiate performance alone. So I mean, in my opinion, this one was kind of struck me off. But again, Chip Kelly thinks outside the box. He's a guy that can take a player and use him specifically to meet the needs that he needs going forward. And I think that we're actually starting to see that now as Chip Kelly has kind of been behind the helm on picking some of these guys throughout the draft. We're starting to see him make some picks that make you kind of scratch your head, but you kind of have to trust him. And I think he's going to be able to turn that franchise around. Trey Turner is a guy that, again, Cam Cameron, that's all you really got to say. I mean, you know, you come out of that offense, and now you're, you know, in my opinion, if you come out of that offensive scheme and you're able to be productive and be a starter, there's no reason why any NFL team shouldn't be looking at you, because you are NFL ready coming out of that offense in LSU.
All right, Stephen M., we give you some fun here and talking about a couple wide receivers who are very interesting projects here. We got San Francisco at 106 going with Bruce Ellington. We've got your guy Kevin Norwood. Seattle takes him at 123, looking to replace Golden Tate.
Well, with San Francisco getting Bruce Ellington, that's an interesting pick. You look at San Francisco, you have aging receiver Anquan Bolden, Vernon Davis, Michael Crabtree is always injured at times. Don't know if they are going to be able to keep him healthy. So getting Bruce Ellington, you talk about a speed receiver, can play the slot well, can make catches in traffic over the middle. San Fran may even probably use him in the return game. So I like to pick up Bruce Ellington. With Kevin Norwood going in the fourth round, pick 123, Seattle has done it again. Owner Paul Allen, general manager Joe Schneider, the Seattle Seahawks once again find the players that no one really looks at, but they are dime pieces. They are jewels in the National Football League. Kevin Norwood, not really particularly fast guy, did show speed at the combine, but he's a possession receiver. He's that clutch third down guy with sure hands. And on top of that, he's another guy Russell Wilson can work with, along with Doug Baldwin, Sidney Rice, Percy Harvin, Jermaine Kearse. You put Kevin Norwood in that system, he can immediately come in, compete, and play, because he has the ability to make the catches and get the first downs.
Bruce Ellington, as recently as 2011, didn't play football. Of course, came to South Carolina primarily as a basketball player, fell in love with football, showed to have NFL-type talent, and really it was that last season, just his junior season, because he's already graduated. So that speaks to some character there, that he's fulfilled his basketball eligibility, plus he graduated and became the leading receiver for a South Carolina offense that was headed up by Connor Shaw. Again, I go back to that Wisconsin Bowl game, that they don't win that game if he doesn't make two incredible catches in the fourth quarter on third and long situations. Kevin Norwood, 38 receptions, 7 touchdowns, showed himself big in the big games. All right, Chad, hang with me here. We're throwing 3 guys at you. 5th round. We got 2 linebackers in Avery Williamson, a guy that not a whole lot of people know about, that I know that you know something about, Avery Williamson out of Kentucky goes to Tennessee. Got another linebacker in Layman Barrow, who was extremely productive at LSU. Another great LSU linebacker goes to Denver at 156. And sandwiched in there, you got Arthur Lynch, who's a traditional tight end, NFL style from like the 90s and early 2000s, NFL kind of tight end coming out of Georgia, going to the Dolphins at 155.
I really liked, I told you last week to watch out for Avery Williamson. I told you this is a guy that's an all-conference linebacker. He's been, not talked about a whole lot because of the performance that Kentucky has in the SEC every year. Same thing goes with Tennessee. If you look at their linemen that they put out in the NFL draft this year, it's kind of the same thing. And to me, that really speaks to the power of the SEC, because you've got guys like this that are sprinkled throughout the entire conference that may or may not have the big name that some of these other guys have nationally, but they come in and they are fighting for a starting position right off the bat as they come in from the draft. And Avery Williamson is one of those guys. He's got a nose for the ball. He's a guy that loves physicality. He's physical at the point of contact. Avery Williamson had a great game, at least in the first quarter against Alabama when they came to Lexington. Then after that, it was kind of sayonara.
By himself.
Yeah. He showed up, but this is a guy that if you put him on a team that has defensive parts around him, he's going to excel. The Arthur Lynch pick, I really like this pick for Miami. Tannehill has a great target here. You've got a tall, big, physical guy that's going to come in at the tight end position. He's got great hands, great route runner. You know what to expect from him on offense just because he comes out of working with Aaron Murray this past couple seasons. So you know that you can count on this guy. Aaron Murray did. I think he put up around 700-plus yards or so this last year. So I really liked this pick going to the Dolphins. And, I'm not a Dolphins fan at all, but I really think that they did a great job in the draft this year. Probably one of the biggest, I think, valued picks out of this draft is Layman Barrow, in my opinion. I think he was the guy that – for getting him this late in the draft is probably one of the biggest values. This guy is a monster when it comes to the linebacking position. He's physical, he's fast, he can, he's going to be able to tackle coming out of that passing route out of the backfield. He's the type of guy that's going to put his head in between the tackles and rush the gaps. I just really thought that this was probably one of the biggest gets for the Denver Broncos, but not only that, one of the biggest gets in the draft at this low. It's a great value for what you're getting. You're getting a guy that's head and shoulders above, and probably should have went further up in the draft, but he slid down to 5. And Denver Broncos just picked up a great piece to go along with Von Miller and a couple of those other guys.
Yeah, Barrow's also the captain there at LSU, wore the coveted number 18. Tough, smart football player that got his defensive teammates in the right position. Okay, a couple defenders here for you, Stephen M. You got Chris Smith coming off the board to Jacksonville at 159, defensive end out of Arkansas, 18 sacks the last 2 years playing that opposite end position to Trey Flowers. And then your guy, Ed Stinson, defensive end from Alabama, going to the Cardinals.
But when you talk about Chris Smith from Arkansas, Mark and Chad, when you look at Chris Smith, we played opposite side Trey Flowers in Arkansas. You talk about a guy that can get after the passer, that can stuff the run, really has that mean streak, as Chad would say at this point, to really rush the passer, to really create havoc on opposing offense. But I was completely shocked to see Stinson Alabama get drafted. I had Stinson on my honorable mentions list. You talk about Ed Stinson, not the guy that's going to jump off the pitch and wow you. In the NFL these days, sometimes it takes you just doing your job well to get drafted. And that's exactly what Ed Stinson did. He did his job well. He's projected that technique, defensive end, can play as defensive end in a 3-4, can play as a defensive tackle in the 3. Bruce Arians did a fine job of getting Ed Stinson. You talk about the Arizona Cardinals, led the league last year in rush defense, giving up 84.4 yards a game. That's Ed Stinson's specialty. He can plug up the holes, stuff run, he can set the edge, contain that outside, force the run back into the middle of the field. That's Ed Stinson's specialty. I thought it was a great fit for Arizona. Last season, Stinson had 42 tackles. As a junior, Stinson led defensive lineman with 8 tackles for a loss. good fit for Arizona, getting another run stopper.
Talent so deep in the SEC, I made a list of guys that didn't get drafted. We could spend 2 hours talking about those guys. We've got a ton more guys to talk about here, but I think two themes we want to hit on before we have to sign off is the quarterbacks, and we want to talk about Michael Sam. So let's group together, and it's interesting that they went back-to-back, and they may be linked for the rest of their careers because of what they did in the SEC. One guy threw for all the yards and the touchdowns, and the other guy won the championships, and now they get picked back-to-back. Aaron Murray, A.J. McCarron to Kansas City and Cincinnati. Then if you drop down into the first two picks of the 6th round, you got Zach Mettenberger, who's probably got more talent than both of them, goes to Tennessee. So we'll start with Chad. Stephen M., you can jump in on the quarterbacks as well with these three guys.
You know, Kansas City, I look for Aaron Murray not, anytime soon. It's a great fit for him because he's going to learn from a great coach. Not only that, he's going to get the opportunity to learn from Alex Smith, who's kind of been in and out. I mean, he was at the 49ers, now he's here. He was kind of treated like the redheaded stepchild at one point in his career. Found a home here. I think Aaron Murray at some point would have the opportunity to move forward in his career with Kansas City. A.J. McCarron to the Bengals is really that threw me off that they were the ones that picked him because I thought that he would have ended up somewhere else besides the Bengals, but you kind of had to step back and say, okay. And I know it's going to be weird for Steven to see him wearing tiger stripes. So that was kind of a take back for me. And I know a lot of the fan base was struggling with that too. But the deal with A.J. McCarron is that we're hearing a lot of backlash over the weekend and yesterday about how he came out and said, well, I played injured most of the time that I was there, and that got a lot of backlash from the fan base throughout Twitter and other social media outlets. And the point is I think that A.J. McCarron probably felt as though a bit slighted that he had slid down to the round 5, and probably as he was projected to go in the first 3 rounds at some point. So I believe that probably kind of got to him a little bit. But if anything, this should put a major chip on his shoulder going forward and make him want to be the guy that beats out Dalton and get the starting job. Mettenberger, I agree with you as far as mechanics and things of that are concerned. He's probably the best pro-ready quarterback. Again, Cam Cameron. We're coming out of that Cam Cameron system. A guy that's already going to be ready for the type of offensive of calls and be kind of ready for schemes that he's already seen a little bit while under Cameron. So I think that there's some there's some bonus there. Tennessee Titans could be looking at their future here. Jake Locker's going to be the guy coming back, but Zach Mettenberger definitely is going to be a guy that's going to be able to slide into those shoes in the future once given the opportunity. And the Titans have got a great quarterbacking coaching crew there, so this is just working out perfect for him. Plus, he's going to get some time to kind of rehab a little bit. But again, these quarterbacks all went back to back, which was it speaks to the depth that the SEC had this year going into the draft, but it also kind of makes you wonder, okay, what did they see that we didn't see for these guys to slide down so far?
All right, Stephen M., on the quarterback class that, again, I'm not going to go year to year, but I think this is the best quarterback class that ever left college. I don't think that they're necessarily all going to translate to the NFL, but in terms of what they did in college, Manziel, McCarron, Murray, we've talked about Franklin, we've talked about Connor Shaw. Let's go with Murray, McCarron. You got Zach Mettenberger going in the 6th round as well.
Well, Mark, I'm going to disagree with Chad on Kansas City getting Aaron Murray. I think it was a reach because when you look at this, Kansas City, outside of Dwayne Bowe and Joe Charles, you don't really have much to work with there. I would have rather seen Aaron Murray go to a Green Bay, to Arizona, a New Orleans, somewhere with a good crop of receivers. I think he can make it work in Kansas City under head coach Andy Reid, but I think going to Arrowhead was a bit of reach there. Didn't really see Aaron Murray there. When you talk about A.J. McCarron going to the Cincinnati Bengals, as Chad mentioned, it might be kind of difficult for me to wear tiger stripes there. But with A.J. McCarron, it is a good fit because when you look at it, Andy Dalton is in the final year of his contract. Andy Dalton in 48 games with Cincinnati, his record is 18. He's passed for over 1,000 yards with 80 touchdowns and 49 interceptions. Now, though those numbers look sexy on paper, if you throw on his playoff statistics, it's not good. He's only had 1 touchdown in the playoffs, versus 6 interceptions, and the Bengals are 0-3 in the playoffs. So Andy Dalton consistent. A.J. McCarron may have to hold a clipboard the next couple of years if the Bengals choose to use the fifth-year extension on Andy Dalton. If not, he can come in ready to play because he has pieces around him with Giovanni Bernard, A.J. Green, Jermaine Gresham, Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis. When you talk about Zach Mettenberger, as Chad mentioned, it's the Cam Cameron system. He's a pro-style quarterback. The NFL is a pro-style system. Mettenberger made some unbelievable variety of throws in his tenure with LSU. You talk about he went from 12 touchdown passes as a junior to 30 touchdown passes this past season. Jake Locker's always injured. If they can keep him healthy, he can work. But if they cannot keep Jake Locker healthy, Zach Mettenberger's the guy for that job. Plus, Tennessee drafted Bishop Sankey, who's going to take a lot of pressure off Mettenberger in that passing game.
Perceptions change very quickly in the NFL. Andy Dalton comes out of TCU, not highly regarded. Then, wow, here's a rookie that can play. Wow, this guy's better than we thought he was going to be. Now, much is expected of him because he's got playoff-type talent around him. He's gotten to the playoffs. Like you say, the stat sheet looks pretty good. 3 bad performances in the playoffs. They haven't scored points against the Chargers and the Texans twice in the playoffs. The Aaron Murray situation, the only disagreement I'll have there with you, Stephen M., is I think, again, things change quickly in the NFL. You really can't look at the personnel around him today because that's Alex Smith's job. It may not be Aaron Murray's job for 3 years, and who knows who's going to be a wide receiver at that point. A.J. McCarron, I think we're looking at, I'm not going to project him to be Tom Brady, but I think in terms of his style of passing, his pocket awareness, and how he's got very good feet in the pocket. He's not a runner. He's not fast. He's anything like that. He's a skinny kid. He's got a decent arm. Brady's increased his arm strength tremendously since he's been a pro. A.J. McCarron kind of could fit that mold if he has half the success that Brady has. Obviously, it's an amazing pick. Zach Mettenberger, not the leader that these two guys have been in college. Nothing close to it. He's got the better arm strength than either Murray or McCarron. Murray's been just a tremendous player in the SEC, and being completely unbiased about it, I wish they would have gotten 5 more seconds or 5 more yards. Stephen M., I know you're going to hate me for this, but I wish he would have gotten 1 more play against Bama in the SEC championship game because I just think the...
Are you kidding me, Mark? Are you kidding me, Mark?
What was that? I missed it.
Are you kidding me right now?
I'm sorry, Stephen M. This
You're
guy
kidding me,
4 great
Mark
years,
Rogers, you
and he
gotta be
deserved 1 more play.
Oh, man.
He just deserved 1 more play, man. Alabama's there every year, and he just 1 more play. It's not like the Tide defense stopped him. But, hey,
like,
it is what it is.
Chris Conley, I felt for Chris Conley there. I mean, Chris Conley, do I catch it? Do I catch it?
You felt for him for what, about a second and a half?
A second and a half.
Yeah, something like that. All right, boys, let's wrap it up. We could talk about all sorts of people because there's more on the board, but we've got to go with Michael Sam at 249 to the St. Louis Rams. Seems to be a good fit for him in terms of the way they've embraced him in the geographic position that he's not going to have to go too far from home.
Man, this is a subject that is going to be it's going to be sensitive to an aspect within media, but at the same time, it's going to be a subject that is going to be talked about even when the season starts. Every time Michael Sam's name is called or even talked about, this is going to be brought up. His name will be forever linked with the words first gay player to enter the NFL draft or to be drafted. I mean, that's always going to be attached to him. It's almost in an aspect, and not really trying to compare these two situations, but it's kind of almost in the same boat as if we look back at Jackie Robinson when he came in to play Major League Baseball. I mean, he didn't necessarily want to be the guy that ended up holding the flag and marching forward and be the guy that was the hero or the idol in that aspect. Michael Sam's kind of in the same situation. He wants to be known as a football player, but guess what? He's going to carry that banner forward now that he's in the NFL. He's going to be the one that's going to have the media on him all steps of the way, every step of the way, and he now is the one that's going to be breaking down barriers through an organization into an all-boys club that we've known for years has pretty much been pretty closed-minded to change. The NFL is one of the last organizations to make any major strides in changing out of all the major sports. Now, they've always had rules in place for discrimination and things of that nature, but when it comes to accepting change and making major changes going forward, the NFL has kind of been one of the last pro organizations to make those steps. That said, I applaud the NFL and I applaud the St. Louis Rams for stepping out and making a decision based off of his playing ability, not off of what his orientation is and what everybody's perception is outside of football. I think that Michael Sam, in my opinion, he's going to be, whether he likes it or not, again, he's going to be considered a martyr when it comes to this the social aspect of him going forward in the pros. But again, I think he's going to be a great player. I think if anything, him being drafted that late should put a chip on his shoulder and make him work harder. But like Fisher said, he's going to have to earn his spot. It's not going to be given to him just because of the circumstances.
All right, Stephen M. Michael Sam selection to the Rams.
I agree 100% with Chad mentioned. You talk about you let your play on the field determine if you're good enough to play in the NFL. One of the main things about the NFL is hard work beats talent. You can be as talented as you want to, but if you come in there with your nose to the grindstone and you work, they can't deny you being a football player. They can't deny what you're trying to accomplish as a professional at the next level. He has his personal life. That's his personal life. But don't allow his personal life to interfere with. Don't allow his personal life to let you interfere with what he can do on the field. I feel like the PR are going to allow him to make one statement, kind of like we did with Manti Te'o at Notre Dame. They're going to allow Micah Sam to make one statement to the media, and then after that, Jeff Fisher's going to plant both of Micah Sam's feet in the football field and say, "Young man, go to work. Now is your time to go to work and prove to this organization that you can play football. We brought you here from Missouri to play football in the National Football League. Looked at your tape, and though you weren't lightning fast in the NFL Combine, you made up for it in the Pro Day. We watched you can explode off the football. You have that motor. You can generate sacks. Put for me in the NFL, which is a league. What are you doing for me right now?" So the question for Micah Sam, can he come to the St. Louis produce? He has the fit for him, Mark. When you're playing alongside guys like Aaron Donald, who the Rams drafted at Pittsburgh, you're playing with Chris Long, you're playing with Brockers. The defensive line is nasty for the Rams. They have that nasty streak and that mentality. For Micah Sam, can he get in there, work hard, and just find his spot?
The prospectus on Michael Sam was generally that he should have been a 4th or 5th round draft pick. He slid to 7. That's not unusual. That happens all the time for various reasons that somebody might slide 2 rounds. So it's impossible for us to conjecture whether he slid 2 rounds because of the situation and because of his announcement. Maybe some teams shied away. We don't know. Maybe some teams are prejudiced. I have no idea. Maybe some teams aren't prejudiced, but they just didn't want to deal with the hassle. They didn't want to deal with the situation that could be involved, regardless of how Michael Sam approaches it and how he deals with it. That they just think it's inevitable. We're going to have to deal with the situation. And, yeah, we've got him rated here, and we got somebody else rated here, so we're going to not have to deal with that situation. We're going to go with the guy that we've graded just a smidge under him and go another direction. We'll never know. So the St. Louis Rams have Michael Sam, and hopefully he is judged strictly on his football playing ability, and as both of you very eloquently pointed out, that's going to be the direction of Steve Fisher, who is Jeff Fisher, who's definitely a very, very solid football man who expects his football players to play hard and to play fundamentally sound football. I know Chad's very, very familiar with Jeff Fisher from his days with the Chicago Bears, who was a excellent, smart football player, has turned out to be an excellent coach and a guy of excellent character, very respected in the league, and he made all the right comments yesterday about Michael Sam and his ability as a football player and how they're going to treat him inside that situation in St. Louis, inside that complex, and that he's going to be judged on football and football alone. All right, boys, it's been fun. Been a good time for the last hour or so. Again, Chad Neipling, SEC Sports Insider, launched this show 6 weeks ago with myself, and we welcome Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama on a regular basis to jump in here with his knowledge of the SEC top to bottom. So this is SEC in 60 full minutes every week, 1 o'clock Eastern and noon Central. All right, gentlemen, great time with you. Let's do it again next week.
Most definitely.